Okay, picture this. It's the middle of the 14th century, and a shadow is falling across the entire world. But this isn't war, it's not famine. It's something way, way more terrifying. An invisible killer that's about to redraw the map of humanity, and in the process, leave behind a mystery that has stumped historians for centuries.
So we call it the Black Death, but this wasn't just another epidemic. This was a catastrophe on a scale that's, well, it's almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around today. Between 1347 and 1351, it just tore across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, and it left absolute devastation everywhere it went.
And the sheer lethality, it's just staggering. Modern research, piecing together hundreds of local studies, now points to an overall mortality rate in Europe of around 60%. Let that sink in. Not a quarter, not even a third. We're talking well over half of the entire population, just gone in less than 5 years.
You know, when the historian Jean Froissart tried to put the horror into words back then, that was the best he could come up with. 1/3 of the world died. I mean, his words, written right in the middle of all that chaos, really tell you everything you need to know. For the people living through it, it must have felt like the end of the world.
And here's the really crazy part. Even Froissart's mind-boggling claim might have been an understatement. Recent estimates suggest that out of about 80 million people in Europe, the Black Death could have killed as many as 50 million. That's an event unlike anything else in recorded history.
So you've got this unstoppable force of nature, this thing that nobody could escape, which makes the central mystery here even more fascinating. Why, in some places, did it just stop?
To really get the mystery, you have to understand the killer. So the disease itself was caused by a bacterium, Yersinia pestis, and it was carried by fleas that lived on black rats, ship rats, which were everywhere humans were. These rats would hop on merchant ships, and their infected fleas basically sailed with them, turning the world's great trade routes into superhighways for death.
And the speed, it was terrifying. It starts in the Crimea in 1346, and then just explodes across the continent. By 47, it's in Sicily. A year later, it's consuming Spain, France, Italy. Within just 3 years, it had reached the farthest corners of the known world. Nothing, and I mean nothing, seemed to slow it down. It just didn't care who you were. It hit cities, it hit the countryside, it killed kings and peasants, saints and sinners. It was like a storm that covered everything. But if you look really close at the maps of all this destruction, you start to see these strange, quiet spots, places the storm somehow missed.
And this brings us right to the heart of it. Smack dab in the middle of Europe, you have Poland and the Kingdom of Bohemia. Now, these places weren't cut off by giant mountains like the Pyrenees, and they didn't have these famously brutal quarantines like Milan did. And yet, for some reason, the plague mostly just passed them by. How is that possible?
For centuries, people just chalked it up to good luck, maybe bad record-keeping. But a radical new theory, coming from the world of theoretical physics and ancient DNA, suggests the answer isn't about what Poland did, but about what the plague actually was. Okay, so scientists have analyzed DNA from plague victims, and what they found is absolutely stunning. The Black Death wasn't just one thing. It was what they call a Big Bang event, basically an evolutionary explosion where one original strain quickly mutated into at least 4 different versions, all spreading at the same time. This totally reframes everything. It wasn't one monster, it was a competing swarm of them.
So if you've got multiple plagues spreading at once, what happens when they run into each other? Well, the answer comes from the physics of waves, and it completely changes how we should picture a pandemic.
You know, the old way of thinking about a pandemic is like dropping a single stone in a pond, one neat ripple spreading out. But this new model, this Big Bang idea, it's way more chaotic. It's like throwing a whole handful of stones into the pond all at once. The ripples don't just spread out, they crash into each other, they interact, they create all these weird patterns.
And this, right here, is the key idea. In physics, when 2 waves meet, their energies can actually cancel each other out. It's called destructive interference. And this process, it doesn't build a wall. It creates a dead zone, a pocket of total calm right in the middle of all the chaos. The theory is that these competing strains of the plague, spreading from all different directions, did exactly that, but on the scale of a continent.
So what does a theoretical void like that actually look like in the real world? Well, this is where the physics model makes a prediction that is so specific, so jaw-dropping, that we can check it against actual history.
So just forget everything you're thinking about physical barriers. The protection here wasn't made of mountains or borders or quarantine lines. It wasn't something you could see or touch.
It was a mathematical shadow, a ghost, a void that was created by the plague's own chaotic, multi-pronged attack. It was the silent eye of the storm, a place that was defined not by what was in it, but by the warring waves of disease raging all around it.
And here it is. This is the showstopper. This image you're seeing, this is not a map of historical plague deaths. This is the output from a mathematical model simulating those interfering waves. The physics predicts that a stable, circular safe zone, a topological void, should form, and the model shows its center lands directly over Poland and Bohemia. The historical anomaly, well, it wasn't an anomaly at all. It was a mathematical necessity.
So it seems the Black Death may have literally carved its own safe zones into the map of Europe. I mean, this completely changes how we think about history and how diseases spread. It shows that pandemics might follow these hidden mathematical rules. And it leaves us with a pretty deep question. If a medieval plague obeyed these rules, what invisible patterns will shape the next one?